The rain hammered down as Officer Bradley yanked the black man from his car. "Hands where I can see them. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Within seconds, Marcus Williams was face down on the wet asphalt, blood mixing with rainwater, Bradley's knee crushing his back. Just another black man in the wrong place. Just another Thursday night in Riverside County. Then Sergeant Torres found the badge. The golden shield caught the streetlight. 3 words that changed everything. Chief of Police. Bradley's knee lifted slowly. His face went white. They had just thrown Chicago's police chief face first into the ground. And Marcus Williams stayed down, letting them see exactly what they had done. "I want you to remember this feeling, Officer Bradley," Marcus said, his voice calm despite the blood on his lips. "This is what accountability feels like." The 2 officers stood frozen in the rain, staring at the badge that had just shattered their world. They had no idea this was only the beginning. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. The rain hammered against Marcus Williams' windshield as he drove through the unfamiliar streets of Riverside County. His rental car's GPS had failed 20 minutes ago, and now at nearly midnight he found himself lost in a neighborhood that seemed to grow darker with each turn. The streetlights flickered sporadically, casting long shadows that danced across abandoned storefronts and empty lots. Marcus pulled over to check his phone, hoping to find his way back to the highway. He had driven 6 hours from Chicago to attend his daughter's graduation ceremony at the State University the next morning. Nothing would make him miss seeing Angela walk across that stage. Not after everything they had been through together since her mother passed away 5 years ago. As he squinted at his phone screen, trying to make sense of the map, he noticed movement in his rearview mirror. A police cruiser had pulled up behind him, its lights suddenly blazing to life, painting the wet street in alternating shades of red and blue. Marcus felt his chest tighten, not from guilt but from a lifetime of learned caution. He had been in law enforcement for 23 years, risen through the ranks to become the youngest police chief in Chicago's history, yet sitting here, alone on a dark street, he was just another black man in a car at night. He placed his hands carefully on the steering wheel, making them visible, and watched as 2 officers approached his vehicle. The younger one, Officer Bradley, walked with the aggressive stride of someone trying to prove themselves. His hand rested on his holstered weapon. The older officer, Sergeant Torres, moved more deliberately, his flashlight beam sweeping across Marcus's rear window. "License and registration," Bradley demanded as Marcus rolled down his window, not bothering with pleasantries or explaining why they had stopped him. "Good evening, officers," Marcus said calmly, his voice carrying the steady authority of someone used to tense situations. "I'm reaching for my wallet in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove compartment." "Keep your hands where I can see them," Bradley barked, his voice cracking slightly with adrenaline. "Step out of the vehicle now." Marcus recognized the tone, fear masked as aggression. He had trained hundreds of young officers, had seen this dangerous combination too many times. "Officer, I'm complying with your request. I'm moving slowly. I'm not a threat." But Bradley was already yanking the door open, his partner moving to the other side of the car. "I said get out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The rain soaked through Marcus's shirt immediately as he stepped onto the asphalt. He kept his hands visible, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. 23 years of experience told him this situation was escalating beyond reason. He could smell the fear rolling off Bradley in waves, could see his pupils dilated with stress. "Officers, I'm a law enforcement officer myself," Marcus began, but Bradley cut him off. "Sure you are. They all say that. Hands behind your back." "I'm reaching for my identification," Marcus said, moving his hand slowly toward his jacket pocket where his badge and police chief identification rested. It was a calculated risk, but he needed to de-escalate this situation before it spiraled further out of control. That's when everything went wrong. Bradley misinterpreted the movement, shouting, "Gun!" even though Marcus's hands were empty and visible. In one violent motion, the young officer grabbed Marcus's arm, twisting it behind his back while sweeping his legs. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of his police combat training kicking in. His body wanted to resist, to counter the takedown he could easily prevent. but he forced himself to go limp, to fall, rather than fight. He knew that any resistance, no matter how justified, could be fatal. His face hit the wet pavement hard, the taste of blood filling his mouth as his lips split against the asphalt. Bradley's knee pressed into his back, forcing the air from his lungs. The rain continued to pour, mixing with the blood from his lip, creating small red rivers that flowed toward the storm drain. "Check him for weapons," Bradley shouted to Torres, who was already pulling Marcus's arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked tight, too tight, cutting into his wrists. It was then, as Torres patted down Marcus's jacket, that his fingers found the leather fold of his badge holder. The sergeant pulled it out, flipping it open under the streetlight. The golden shield caught the light, the words Chief of Police clearly visible beneath the City of Chicago seal. Torres's face went pale. Bradley, stop. Look at this." But Bradley was still riding his adrenaline high, still pressing his knee into Marcus's back. What is it?" Torres held the badge holder with trembling hands, rain droplets sliding off the laminated identification card that bore Marcus's photo and title. Marcus Williams, Chief of Police, Chicago Police Department. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the rain seemed to quiet for a moment, as if nature itself held its breath. Bradley's knee slowly lifted from Marcus's back, and the young officer stumbled backward, his face cycling through expressions of confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. Marcus remained still on the ground, his cheek pressed against the cold, wet pavement. He could have gotten up, could have raged at them, could have immediately asserted his authority. But he stayed down for another moment, letting them fully absorb what they had done. He wanted them to see him not as a police chief, but as a man, a black man they had thrown to the ground without cause, without dignity, without humanity. "Sir, Chief Williams." "Oh God, I'm so sorry," Bradley stammered, reaching down to help Marcus up, but Torres grabbed his arm, stopping him. "Get the keys," Torres whispered urgently. "Uncuff him. Now." As Bradley fumbled with the handcuff keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice, Marcus finally spoke. His voice calm, but carrying a weight that made both officers flinch. "I want you to remember this feeling, Officer Bradley. This exact moment. Because this is what accountability feels like." The handcuffs clicked open, and Marcus slowly pushed himself up from the ground, his suit ruined, his lips still bleeding, rain washing the blood and dirt from his face. He stood to his full height, 6 feet 2 inches of dignified authority despite his disheveled appearance. Neither officer could meet his eyes. "Sir, we didn't know," Bradley began, but Marcus held up his hand, silencing him. "That's exactly the problem, officer. You didn't know, and you didn't care to know. You saw a black man in a car at night, and that was enough for you." Marcus wiped blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "Tell me, Officer Bradley, what crime did you observe me committing? What reasonable suspicion did you have for this stop?" Bradley's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It was Torres who answered, his voice barely above a whisper. You were parked on the side of the road, sir, in a high-crime area. I was checking my phone for directions," Marcus said evenly. "Is that a crime in Riverside County?" The two officers stood in the rain, their uniforms soaked through, looking like children caught in a transgression far beyond their comprehension. Marcus could have destroyed their careers with a single phone call. He had that power. But as he stood there, rain washing away the blood and dirt, he thought about Angela, about the graduation ceremony tomorrow, about the systemic issues that led to this moment. "Give me your names and badge numbers," Marcus said, pulling out his phone, which miraculously had survived the encounter intact. "And your supervisor's name." As the officers provided the information, their voices trembling, Marcus noticed something that made his investigator's instincts kick in. Bradley's badge number didn't match the standard sequence for Riverside County. And Torres kept glancing nervously at a specific house across the street, not the quick, embarrassed glances of someone who had made a mistake, but the calculated looks of someone checking if they were being watched. Something else was happening here. This wasn't just a case of racial profiling gone wrong. Marcus had stumbled into something bigger, and these two officers were more nervous than they should be, even given the circumstances. "Tell me," Marcus said slowly, watching their faces carefully, "how long have you been patrolling this particular neighborhood? And why are you really here at midnight?" The look that passed between Bradley and Torres confirmed his suspicions. They weren't just on routine patrol. They were here for a specific reason, and Marcus's unexpected presence had disrupted something. Torres cleared his throat. "Sir, we should probably call our captain. He'll want to—" "No," Marcus interrupted. "No calls. Not yet. First, you're going to tell me what's really going on in this neighborhood, because I've been in law enforcement long enough to know when officers are hiding something. And gentlemen," he paused, his voice dropping to a tone that made both officers take an involuntary step back, "I'm not leaving until I get answers." The rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, but the tension in the air only grew thicker. Marcus Williams had come to Riverside County to see his daughter graduate. Instead, he had stumbled into something that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone in this forgotten corner of the city. And somewhere in the darkness, behind the curtained windows of the house Torres kept watching, someone else was watching them, waiting to see what the chief of police from Chicago would do next. Officer Bradley's radio crackled to life, making all three men jump. "Unit 47, what's your status? You've been stationary for 15 minutes. Torres reached for his radio, but Marcus grabbed his wrist. "Let me guess," Marcus said quietly. "That's not really dispatch, is it?" The fear in Torres's eyes told him everything he needed to know. Marcus had spent 2 decades learning to read people, to understand the subtle differences between the fear of consequences and the fear of something much worse. These officers weren't just worried about their careers, they were terrified of someone. "Answer it," Marcus ordered, releasing Torres's wrist. "Tell them everything is under control, and make it believable." Torres took the radio with shaking hands. "Unit 47, we're 10-4. Just a routine traffic stop. Driver had a broken taillight. We'll be mobile in 2 minutes." "Copy that, 47. Reynolds wants you back at the checkpoint in 10. The radio went silent. Marcus noticed how Bradley's hand instinctively moved toward his weapon, not because of Marcus, but because of something else, something that had him looking over his shoulder every few seconds. "Checkpoint?" Marcus asked. "What checkpoint? And who is Reynolds?" The 2 officers exchanged another glance. Finally, Torres spoke, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Sir, you need to leave. Right now. Get in your car, drive to your daughter's graduation, and forget this ever happened. Please." But Marcus had already seen too much. His trained eye had noticed things that didn't add up. The house Torres kept watching had reinforced windows, barely visible in the darkness. There were fresh tire tracks in the mud leading to a garage that should have been abandoned. And now that he was paying attention, he could hear it, the low hum of a generator coming from somewhere behind the house. "I asked you a question, Sergeant Torres." "What checkpoint?" Bradley suddenly stepped forward, his earlier aggression replaced by desperate pleading. "Chief Williams, you don't understand. This isn't what you think it is. We're not bad cops, we're just..." "Just what?" Marcus interrupted. "Just following orders? Just looking the other way? I've heard every excuse in the book, officer. We're just trying to stay alive," Torres finished quietly. The words hung in the air like a confession. Marcus studied both men carefully. Torres was about 50, with gray threading through his hair and the weathered look of someone who had seen too much. Bradley couldn't be more than 25, still green, still learning whether he would become the kind of cop who made a difference or the kind who just survived. "Start from the beginning," Marcus said, his tone shifting from authoritative to something almost paternal. "Tell me everything. And I mean everything." Torres looked around nervously, then gestured toward the police cruiser. "Can we at least get out of the rain? And out of sight?" They sat in the cruiser, Marcus in the back where just minutes ago he would have been a prisoner, the 2 officers in front. The windows fogged up from their wet clothes, creating a strange sense of privacy in the middle of the empty street. 3 months ago, Torres began, a new captain was assigned to our precinct, Captain Reynolds. He came from Detroit with a spotless record and recommendations from everyone who mattered. Within 2 weeks, he had reassigned half the force, changed all our patrol routes, and set up what he called community safety checkpoints. But they're not really safety checkpoints, Bradley added, his young face etched with conflict. They're... God. I don't even know how to say this without sounding crazy. Try, Marcus said simply. Torres took a deep breath. Every Thursday night between midnight and 3 a.m., certain houses in this neighborhood receive deliveries. We're told to create a perimeter to make sure no one comes in or out except the approved vehicles. We're told it's part of a federal operation, that we're not supposed to ask questions, just follow orders. And you believed that? Marcus asked. At first, yes, Torres admitted. Reynolds had all the right paperwork, all the right authorization codes. But then Officer Daniels started asking questions. What happened to Officer Daniels? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Car accident, Bradley said bitterly. Single vehicle, ran off the road into the river. They said he fell asleep at the wheel, but Tommy Daniels was the most careful driver I knew, and it happened the day after he told us he was going to the FBI. Marcus felt the familiar chill of a case breaking open, the pieces starting to form a picture he didn't like. These deliveries, what's being delivered? We don't know for sure, Torres said. The trucks are sealed, unmarked. But last month, one of them had a mechanical problem. Had to stop right in front of us, and when the driver got out to check the engine, he paused, swallowing hard. Chief Williams, there were sounds coming from inside that truck. Crying. Children crying. The silence in the car was suffocating. Marcus felt his jaw clench, his hands forming fists involuntarily. Of all the crimes he had investigated, crimes against children were the ones that still kept him awake at night. You're telling me, Marcus said slowly, his voice dangerous, that you suspect human trafficking is happening in this neighborhood, under the protection of corrupt police officers, and you've done nothing about it? We tried, Bradley exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion. Torres and we tried to follow one of the trucks once. The next day, Reynolds called us into his office. He didn't say anything directly, but he had photos on his desk. Photos of Torres's family, of my girlfriend. The message was clear. Torres pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he scrolled through it. I've been documenting everything I could safely. License plates, times, dates. I know it's not enough, but I thought maybe someday, if the right person came along. He showed Marcus the phone. There were dozens of photos, carefully cataloged. Blurry shots of trucks, partial license plates, timestamps. It was the work of a man trying to build a case while terrified for his life. Marcus studied the evidence, his mind already working through the implications. This wasn't just local corruption. An operation this size required resources, planning, and protection at multiple levels. Captain Reynolds might be the face of it in Riverside County, but he was certainly not working alone. The house you keep looking at, Marcus said to Torres. That's where they take them, isn't it? Torres nodded miserably. Every Thursday night. Tonight. The trucks should arrive in. He checked his watch. 43 minutes. Marcus felt the weight of the decision before him. He could leave, drive to his daughter's graduation, and pretend he had never seen any of this. He could make some calls from a safe distance, let others handle it. Or he could do what every instinct in his body was telling him to do. Act now, tonight, before more children disappeared into the darkness. How many officers are involved? Marcus asked. At least 6 that we know of, Torres replied. Maybe more. Reynolds handpicked them all. They call themselves the Night Watch. And how many are clean? Besides us? Torres laughed bitterly. Maybe 3 or 4 who are too scared to do anything. The rest either don't know or don't want to know. Marcus made his decision. All right, here's what we're going to do. Torres, I need you to... The sound of engines interrupted him. 2 black SUVs were approaching from opposite ends of the street, moving fast, their headlights cutting through the rain like predatory eyes. They screeched to a halt, boxing in the police cruiser. Oh God, Bradley whispered. It's Reynolds. He knows. 4 men emerged from the SUVs, all wearing police uniforms, all moving with the coordinated precision of people who had done this before. Leading them was a man who could only be Captain Reynolds, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of dead eyes Marcus had seen in the worst criminals he had ever arrested. "Gentlemen," Reynolds called out, his voice carrying despite the rain. "I heard we have a visitor from Chicago. Chief Williams, why don't you step out of the car so we can have a proper conversation?" Marcus looked at Torres and Bradley. Both officers were pale, terrified, but something had changed in their expressions. They had moved past fear into something else. Resolve, perhaps, or maybe just the recognition that they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. "Whatever happens," Marcus said quietly, "follow my lead. And remember, we're the good guys. Sometimes that has to be enough." He stepped out of the cruiser, standing tall despite his ruined suit and bloodied lip. Reynolds approached, a smile playing on his lips that never reached his eyes. "Chief Williams," Reynolds said, extending his hand as if they were meeting at a conference. "I've heard so much about you. The youngest police chief in Chicago's history. The man who cleaned up the South Side. The incorruptible Marcus Williams. What an unexpected pleasure." Marcus didn't take the offered hand. "Captain Reynolds, I've heard about you too, though I suspect my sources are a bit different from yours." Reynolds's smile widened. "I imagine they are. Tell me, Chief, what brings you to our little corner of Riverside County at such a late hour?" "My daughter's graduation," Marcus replied evenly, "though I seem to have stumbled onto something much more interesting." "Have you now?" Reynolds stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell his cologne mixed with something else, gun oil and fear sweat. "And what might that be?" "A cancer," Marcus said simply. "The kind that needs to be cut out before it spreads." The smile finally disappeared from Reynolds's face. "You know, Chief Williams, car accidents are so common these days, especially on these wet roads. A man could lose control, crash into the river. Happens all the time. Just ask Officer Daniels." "Is that a threat, Captain?" "It's the observation about road safety," Reynolds replied. "I'd hate for your daughter to lose her father the night before her graduation. Angela, isn't it? Studying criminal justice, following in her father's footsteps. Room 247 in Harper Hall. Such a bright future ahead of her." The mention of his daughter's name, her dorm room, sent ice through Marcus's veins, but he had faced down threats before, had learned long ago that showing fear was often more dangerous than the threat itself. "You've done your homework," Marcus said calmly. "But you made one mistake, Reynolds." "Oh? And what's that?" Marcus smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unnerve Reynolds more than any threat could have. "You assumed I came here alone." Reynolds's confident demeanor cracked for just a moment, his eyes darting to the shadows between buildings, to the rooftops, to the dark windows overlooking the street. Marcus saw the exact moment when doubt crept into the captain's mind. That sudden realization that perhaps he didn't hold all the cards after all. "You're bluffing," Reynolds said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier authority. Marcus pulled out his phone, holding it up so Reynolds could see the screen. A timer was running. 47 minutes, 23 seconds, and counting down. 47 minutes ago, when your officers threw me to the ground, my phone automatically triggered a dead man's switch. It's a little app my tech department developed. Quite clever, really. If I don't input a specific code every hour, it sends everything, GPS location, audio recordings, video files, to a predetermined list of contacts. "You're recording this?" Reynolds's hand moved toward his weapon. "Have been since I stepped out of my car," Marcus replied calmly. "But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is who's on that contact list. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen, head of the Human Trafficking Task Force, State Attorney General Michael Robertson, and my personal favorite, investigative reporter Janet Murphy from the Chicago Tribune, who's been looking for a story exactly like this." One of Reynolds's men, a thick-necked officer with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. "Want me to take his phone, Cap?" "Go ahead," Marcus said, tossing the phone to the sergeant, who caught it reflexively. "It won't matter. The data's already uploaded to the cloud. The countdown is just a courtesy, really, to give you time to make the right decision. Reynolds was sweating now despite the cold rain. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Williams. This goes so much higher than you can imagine. People with real power, real influence, they'll crush you." "Maybe," Marcus conceded. "But I've been crushed before, still standing. The question is, Reynolds, when this all comes crashing down, and it will come crashing down, do you want to be the captain who went down with the ship, or the one who helped expose the truth?" A bitter laugh escaped Reynolds' throat. "You think I have a choice? You think any of us have a choice? These people, they don't give you options, they give you orders. And if you don't follow them..." He trailed off, his eyes distant, haunted. Marcus recognized that look. He had seen it in witnesses too terrified to testify, in cops who had seen too much and couldn't find their way back. Reynolds wasn't just corrupt, he was trapped. "There's always a choice," Marcus said softly. "Maybe not a good one, maybe not an easy one, but always a choice. Tell me, Reynolds, how did they get to you? What did they have on you?" For a moment, the facade completely dropped. Reynolds looked like what he really was, a middle-aged cop in over his head, drowning in something he couldn't control. "My son," Reynolds said quietly, so quietly his own men leaned in to hear. "My son was in a car accident in Detroit, hit a family, killed a little girl. He was drunk. 19 years old, his whole life ahead of him, and he was looking at vehicular manslaughter. Then these people appeared, like angels from heaven. They made it all go away. Witnesses changed their stories, evidence disappeared, the prosecutor suddenly decided not to press charges. All they wanted in return was a favor. One little favor. Let me guess, Marcus said. The favor kept getting bigger. Reynolds nodded miserably. First it was just looking the other way on some smuggling. Then it was providing protection. Then, he gestured toward the house with the reinforced windows. Then it became this, and by the time I realized what I was really protecting, it was too late. They had videos of me at their operations, documents with my signature, bank accounts in my name I'd never opened but were full of dirty money. I try to leave, they destroy me. I try to expose them. My son goes to prison, and they destroy me anyway. The sergeant who had taken Marcus's phone was getting impatient. Cap, we don't have time for this. The delivery will be here in 30 minutes. We need to clear the area. But Reynolds wasn't listening to him anymore. He was staring at Marcus with the desperate hope of a drowning man who had just spotted a life preserver. Could you really do it? Reynolds asked. Could you really bring them down? Not alone, Marcus admitted. But I don't work alone. That's the difference between cops like us and criminals like them. We have backup. As if on cue, Torres's radio crackled to life again, but this time, the voice that came through wasn't asking for a status update. This is FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen. We have the area surrounded, Captain Reynolds. Instruct your men to stand down immediately. Reynolds's men spun around, weapons drawn, searching for threats that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Red laser dots appeared on their chests, sniper sights from positioned FBI tactical teams. The sound of helicopters grew louder, and suddenly, spotlights blazed to life, turning the rain-soaked street into a stage. Marcus hadn't been bluffing, but he hadn't been entirely truthful either. He hadn't called the FBI 47 minutes ago. He had called them 3 hours ago, when he first entered Riverside County. Sarah Chen was an old friend from his academy days, now running the Midwest Division of the Human Trafficking Task Force. When Marcus had called to tell her he was passing through Riverside County, she had mentioned they were investigating suspicious activity in the area. His traffic stop hadn't been entirely accidental. He had been driving through neighborhoods Sarah had flagged as potential trafficking routes, hoping to observe something that might help her investigation. What he hadn't expected was to become part of the operation himself. Hands where we can see them. Agent Chen's voice boomed through a megaphone. This is a federal operation. Any resistance will be met with immediate force. Reynolds's men looked to their captain for orders, but Reynolds had already dropped his weapon, his hands rising slowly above his head. The fight had gone out of him entirely. He looked almost relieved. It's over, Reynolds said to his men. Put your weapons down. It's over. One by one, the corrupt officers complied, their weapons clattering on the wet pavement. FBI agents in tactical gear emerged from hidden positions, moving with practiced efficiency to secure the scene. Agent Chen herself, a compact woman with sharp eyes and graying hair, approached Marcus with a slight smile. "Cutting it close, Marcus," she said. "We were about to move in anyway, but your situation accelerated our timeline." "Sorry about that," Marcus replied. "I genuinely did get lost. Getting thrown to the ground by these officers was just a bonus." Sarah's expression hardened as she looked at his split lip and ruined suit. "We got all of that on surveillance. These officers are going to have a lot to answer for." She turned to Reynolds, who stood with his hands cuffed behind his back, rain streaming down his defeated face. "Captain Reynolds, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, corruption, abuse of power, and about a dozen other charges I'll let the federal prosecutor enumerate. You have the right to remain silent." "I'll testify," Reynolds interrupted. "I'll tell you everything. Names, dates, locations, the whole network. But I want protection for my son. He didn't know anything about this." Sarah nodded to one of her agents, who led Reynolds away. As he passed Marcus, Reynolds stopped for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said. "About your face, about the threats to your daughter. I'm sorry about all of it. I used to be a good cop, you know. 20 years ago, I was just like you. Thought I could save the world." "You still can," Marcus replied. "One testimony at a time." As Reynolds was placed into an FBI vehicle, Torres and Bradley approached Marcus hesitantly. Both young officers looked shell-shocked by the rapid turn of events. "Are we under arrest too?" Bradley asked, his voice small. Agent Chen looked at Marcus questioningly. He considered for a moment, then shook his head. "These two were trying to do the right thing," Marcus said. "They were documenting the corruption, building a case. They're witnesses, not suspects." Relief washed over both officers' faces. Torres pulled out his phone, offering it to Agent Chen. "Everything I documented is on here. 3 months of surveillance, photos, recordings." "I know it's not much, but—" "It's more than you think," Sarah interrupted, taking the phone carefully. "This kind of documentation from inside the operation is invaluable. You two may have just saved dozens of lives." The sound of engines grew louder again, but this time it wasn't more law enforcement arriving. A large truck, exactly like the ones Torres had described, turned onto the street, then immediately tried to reverse when the driver saw the FBI presence. It didn't get far. Spike strips had already been deployed and the truck's tires exploded in rapid succession, bringing it to a grinding halt. FBI agents swarmed the vehicle, pulling out the driver and his companion. But it was the sound from the back of the truck that made everyone freeze, crying, just as Torres had described. Children crying. Sarah barked orders, and agents carefully opened the truck's rear doors. Inside, huddled together in the darkness, were 14 children ranging from perhaps 8 to 16 years old. They were dirty, frightened, and malnourished, but they were alive. Marcus felt his throat tighten as he watched agents and paramedics gently coax the children from the truck, wrapping them in blankets, offering water and soft words of reassurance. This was why he had become a cop in the first place. Not for the authority or the badge, but for moments like this, when the monsters were stopped and the innocent were saved. His phone buzzed, the one Sarah had returned to him after taking it as evidence. It was a text from Angela. "Dad, where are you? The hotel said you never checked in. Please tell me you're not working a case the night before my graduation." Marcus smiled despite everything, typing back, "Long story, baby. I'll be there, I promise. Wouldn't miss it for the world." "Chief Williams," Sarah called out. "We need you to come to the station, give a full statement. This is going to be a long night." Marcus looked at his watch. It was nearly 2 a.m. The graduation ceremony was at 10 a.m. It would be tight, but he could make it. "Sarah, I need a favor," he said. "Can one of your agents drive me to the university after we're done, and maybe stop somewhere I can get a clean suit?" She laughed. "After what you just helped us accomplish, I'll drive you myself. And I think we can expense a suit to the federal government. Consider it compensation for your ruined clothes and exemplary service." As Marcus walked toward the FBI command vehicle, he passed the house with the reinforced windows. Agents were already breaching it, and he could hear shouts from inside, more arrests being made. The entire trafficking network in Riverside County was unraveling in real time, all because he had gotten lost and pulled over to check his phone. Torres caught up with him before he reached the vehicle. "Chief Williams," the sergeant said, "I just wanted to say, what you did tonight, standing up to Reynolds even when you thought you were alone, that's the kind of cop I always wanted to be, the kind I forgot I could be." "You never forgot," Marcus replied, putting a hand on Torres's shoulder. "You were just waiting for the right moment, and when it came, you made the right choice. That's all any of us can do." As he climbed into the FBI vehicle, Marcus thought about the speech he would give at Angela's graduation luncheon. He had planned something generic about following your dreams and working hard. But now he had a different message, one forged in the rain and darkness of this night. Sometimes you stumble into your purpose. Sometimes getting lost leads you exactly where you need to be. And sometimes the most important moments of your life happen when you're just trying to get to the next day. The FBI field office in Riverside County was a blur of activity. Marcus sat in a small interview room, his third cup of coffee growing cold as he recounted the night's events for the fourth time. Different agents, different questions, same story. His suit, what was left of it, had been taken as evidence, and he now wore an FBI windbreaker and borrowed pants that were 2 inches too short. It was 5:47 a.m. according to the wall clock. The graduation ceremony started in just over 4 hours, and he was still 2 hours away from the university. Sarah had promised to get him there, but she was caught up in processing the 14 rescued children, making sure each one received medical attention and that their families were contacted. A knock on the door interrupted his exhaustion-fueled trance. Agent Chen entered, looking as tired as he felt, but carrying an energy that suggested the night had been worth it. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, setting a tablet in front of him. On the screen was a video interview with one of the arrested traffickers, not Reynolds, but someone higher up the chain who had been caught at the house. The man was talking rapidly, desperately, trying to cut a deal. "The operation extends to 6 states, the man was saying. Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Indianapolis, and here. Captain Reynolds was just one node. There are others like him in each city, cops who've been compromised or bought. I can give you names, locations, the whole network, but I need immunity." Sarah paused the video. "This is bigger than we thought, Marcus. And some of the names he's mentioning, they're from your city, people you might know." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Who?" "Lieutenant Carl Morrison, for one." Morrison. Marcus knew him. They'd worked together for 5 years before Marcus made chief. Morrison had been at his promotion ceremony, had sent flowers when his wife died. The betrayal stung more than his split lip. "We're going to need your help," Sarah continued. "You're the only one in position to move against the Chicago cell without alerting them, but that's a conversation for next week. Right now, we have a more immediate problem." "What problem?" Sarah pulled up another file on the tablet, a photograph that made Marcus's blood run cold. It was Angela, his daughter, walking across campus, clearly taken without her knowledge. The photo was dated 3 days ago. "We found this on Reynolds's phone," Sarah explained, along with photos of the family members of every clean cop in Riverside County. It was their insurance policy. If anyone stepped out of line, they had leverage ready. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "Is Angela in danger?" "We don't think so. We've rounded up everyone connected to the Riverside operation, and our agents in the other cities are moving as we speak. But Marcus..." Sarah hesitated. "There's something else. The reason they had Angela's photo wasn't just about threatening you tonight. They've been watching her for weeks." "Why?" Sarah pulled up another document, a transcript of intercepted communications. "Your daughter's criminal justice professor, Dr. James Hoffman. He's been feeding them information about students who might make good recruits, idealistic kids who could be corrupted early, or ones with family and law enforcement who could provide inside information. Angela was on his list." The rage that Marcus had been keeping in check all night threatened to boil over. They hadn't just threatened his daughter. They had been grooming her, planning to pull her into their web of corruption before she even graduated. "Where is Hoffman now?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "In custody. We picked him up an hour ago at his home. He's already lawyering up, but with the evidence we have, he's looking at 20 to life." Marcus stood up, pacing the small room. "I need to tell Angela. She deserves to know that her professor, someone she trusted and respected, was part of this." "After the graduation," Sarah suggested gently. "Let her have her day first. Let her celebrate. The truth will still be there tomorrow." Before Marcus could respond, the door burst open. A young agent, breathless and excited, rushed in. "Agent Chen, you need to come quickly. One of the kids, she's asking for the police chief. She says she needs to tell him something important." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, then followed the agent down a long hallway to a medical examination room. Inside, sitting on an examination table with a blanket around her shoulders, was a girl who couldn't have been more than 12. She had dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. When she saw Marcus, she straightened up. "You're the chief? The one who got lost?" "That's me," Marcus said gently, pulling up a chair so he was at her eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophia," she replied. "Sophia Daniels." Marcus felt Sarah stiffen beside him. Daniels. As in Officer Tommy Daniels, who had died in a suspicious car accident. "Daniels?" Marcus asked carefully. "Was your father—" "He was a police officer," Sophia interrupted, tears starting to stream down her face. "They killed him because he was trying to save me. He found out about the trafficking, found out they had taken me. He was going to the FBI, but they killed him first." The room was silent except for Sophia's quiet sobs. Marcus gently took her small hand in his large one. "Your father was a hero," he said firmly. "And because of what he started, because of his courage, you're safe now. You're all safe." Sophia looked up at him with those two old eyes. "There are more," she whispered. "Other kids, in other cities. They moved us around every few weeks. I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago in a warehouse near the docks. There were 20 other kids there." Marcus looked at Sarah, who was already on her phone, barking orders to units in Chicago. This wasn't ending tonight. It was just beginning. "Sophia," Marcus said gently, "would you be willing to tell the FBI agents everything you remember? Every place, every face, every detail? It would help us save the others." She nodded bravely. "I memorized everything I could. Daddy always said I had a good memory, that I should be a detective someday. I knew that if I ever got out, I'd need to remember everything to help catch them." Marcus squeezed her hand, fighting back his own tears. 12 years old, and she had maintained the presence of mind to gather intelligence while being trafficked. Officer Daniels had raised a remarkable daughter. "We'll make sure you're safe," Marcus promised, "and we'll find you a good family." "I have an aunt," Sophia interrupted, "in Florida. Daddy told me if anything ever happened to him, I should go to Aunt Maria. Do you think, could someone call her?" "We'll call her right now," Sarah assured her. "And we'll make sure you get to her safely." As they left Sophia with a child specialist and victim advocate, Sarah checked her watch. "It's 6:30, Marcus. If we leave now, I can get you to the university by 9:00. You'll have time to change and make the ceremony." "What about my statement, the paperwork?" "Can wait until Monday. You've given us enough to work with, and frankly, you look like you're about to collapse. Go see your daughter graduate. That's an order from the federal government." 40 minutes later, Marcus sat in the passenger seat of Sarah's FBI sedan, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold as they sped toward the university. He had a garment bag in the back with a new suit, nothing fancy, but clean and pressed and exactly his size. Sarah had somehow managed to procure it from a 24-hour big and tall store that catered to law enforcement. "You know this isn't over," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "The names that trafficker gave us, the connections to Chicago, you're going to be fighting this war in your own backyard now. I know, Marcus replied. But at least now I know who the enemy is. Morrison, Hoffman, whoever else is involved. They've been hiding in plain sight pretending to be the good guys while destroying lives. That ends now. It's going to be dangerous. They'll come after you. After Angela. Marcus thought about Sophia Daniels, about her father who had died trying to save her, about the 14 children they had rescued tonight, about all the others still out there. They can try, he said simply. They drove in silence for a while, the highway empty except for early morning commuters. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Angela. Dad, the hotel still says you haven't checked in. You better not be standing me up. He typed back, on my way, baby. Had car trouble but getting a ride from a friend. Save me a seat. There better be a good story behind this, she replied, adding several skeptical emojis. If only she knew, Marcus thought. But Sarah was right. Today was for celebration. The harsh truths could wait. As they passed a sign indicating the university was only 30 miles away, Sarah's phone rang. She answered on Bluetooth, and the voice of one of her agents filled the car. Agent Chen, we've just executed the warrant on the Chicago warehouse Sophia Daniels mentioned. We found 17 children and arrested 6 suspects. The intelligence she provided was accurate down to the smallest detail. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. 17 more children saved. 17 more families who would get their kids back. All because a 12-year-old girl had the courage and presence of mind to memorize everything she could. There's something else, the agent continued. We found evidence linking this to similar operations in 12 other states. This is going to be the largest human trafficking bust in FBI history. The director is flying in personally to oversee the operation. Sarah glanced at Marcus. You realize you're going to get a commendation for this, right? Probably a medal. I don't want a medal, Marcus said quietly. I just want those kids safe and those monsters in prison. Well, you're getting both whether you want them or not. As they took the exit for the university, Marcus could see the campus coming into view, red brick buildings covered in ivy, students and families already gathering for the day's celebrations. It looked so normal, so peaceful, so far removed from the darkness he had witnessed just hours ago. You okay? Sarah asked, noticing his expression. Just thinking about Angela, Marcus replied. She's about to graduate with a degree in criminal justice, all ready to save the world. She has no idea how dark it can get out there. She had a good teacher, Sarah pointed out. You've prepared her better than most. Have I? I've always tried to protect her from the worst of it. Maybe that was a mistake. Sarah pulled into the university's visitor parking. Marcus, you can't protect her from the world. But you've given her something better. The tools and the values to fight back against the darkness. That's all any parent can do. Marcus stood in the bathroom of the university's visitor center, staring at his reflection as he adjusted his new tie. The suit fit perfectly, and he had managed to clean up his split lip enough that it was barely noticeable. But his eyes told the story of the night. They were the eyes of a man who had seen too much, who had walked through darkness and emerged changed. His phone buzzed. Angela again. Dad, ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Where are you? Walking to the auditorium now, he typed back. Front row, right? 3rd row, left side. Look for the girl who's about to have a panic attack because her father is cutting it close. Marcus smiled, pocketing his phone. He had 15 minutes to get across campus. As he walked, he noticed the other families. Proud parents with cameras, grandparents moving slowly but determinedly toward the auditorium, siblings looking bored but secretly proud. Normal families living normal lives, blissfully unaware that just 2 hours away, federal agents were still processing one of the largest human trafficking busts in history. The auditorium was packed, a sea of black caps and gowns mixed with the colorful clothing of families. Marcus spotted Angela immediately. She had her mother's profile, that same determined jaw and elegant neck. She was scanning the crowd anxiously, and when she saw him, her face broke into a relieved smile that made everything from the past 12 hours worth it. He made his way to his seat, accepting the program from an usher, trying to look like just another proud parent. But as he sat down, he noticed something that made his investigative instincts flare. 3 rows behind him, trying to blend in with the other families, sat a man in a poorly fitting suit who kept checking his phone and glancing toward the exits. Federal agent, Marcus realized. Sarah had assigned protection without telling him. The ceremony began with the usual pomp: processional music, speeches about bright futures and changing the world. Marcus found himself studying the faculty on stage, wondering if any of them were like Dr. Hoffman, corrupted and corrupting. When the dean mentioned Hoffman's name as one of the distinguished professors who couldn't attend due to unexpected circumstances, Marcus saw Angela's confused expression. She had no idea her mentor was currently in federal custody. Then they were calling names, and suddenly it was Angela's turn. Angela Marie Williams, Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, magna cum laude. Marcus stood, applauding with everyone else, but his vision blurred with tears he hadn't expected. His little girl, walking across that stage with such confidence and grace. Elizabeth would have been so proud. As Angela accepted her diploma, she looked directly at him and mouthed, "We did it, Dad." "No, baby," Marcus thought. "You did it. Despite everything I couldn't protect you from, despite the dangers you don't even know about yet, you did it." After the ceremony, in the chaos of families reuniting and photos being taken, Angela threw her arms around Marcus's neck. "You made it," she said, then pulled back, noticing his split lip for the first time. "Dad, what happened to your face?" "It's nothing," Marcus said. "Just a little incident with some overzealous officers. I'll tell you about it later." Overzealous officers? Angela's eyes narrowed. She had inherited his ability to detect when someone wasn't telling the whole truth. "Dad, what really happened?" Before he could answer, a familiar voice called out, "Chief Williams." Marcus turned to see Torres and Bradley approaching, both in civilian clothes, looking oddly out of place among the celebrating families. Angela's confusion deepened. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Torres said, glancing at Angela. "You must be the graduate. Congratulations, your father. He saved a lot of lives last night, including ours in a way." "Dad?" Angela looked between the 3 men. "What is going on?" Marcus was about to deflect again when he saw something that changed his mind. Behind Torres and Bradley, being escorted by 2 FBI agents, was Sophia Daniels. She was wearing clean clothes and looked better than she had hours ago, but she was clearly there for a reason. Sophia walked up to Marcus, ignoring the curious stares from the crowd. "Chief Williams," she said formally. Then her composure cracked slightly. "I wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to meet her." When she looked at Angela, "Your daughter. My dad used to talk about you, about how you were going to be a great cop like your father. He said the world needed more people like the Williams family." Angela stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. "Your dad knew about me?" "Officer Tommy Daniels," Marcus said quietly. "He died trying to save his daughter and others from human traffickers. Sophia was one of the children we rescued last night." The color drained from Angela's face as the pieces clicked together. The incident with overzealous officers. "Dad, were you working a case? Last night? The night before my graduation?" "I wasn't supposed to be," Marcus admitted. "I was just trying to get here. But sometimes you stumble into your purpose," Sophia interrupted, looking wise beyond her 12 years. "That's what you told me. That's what my dad always said too. That being a cop isn't about looking for trouble, but about being ready when trouble finds you." Angela knelt down to Sophia's level, her graduation gown pooling around her. "Your dad sounds like he was an amazing person." "He was," Sophia said simply. "He would have liked you. He said you wrote a paper about police corruption that Dr. Hoffman called dangerously naive. Dad said that meant you were on the right track." At the mention of Hoffman's name, Angela looked up at Marcus. "Dr. Hoffman. What does he have to do with?" She stopped, seeing the answer in her father's eyes. "Oh my God. He was part of it, wasn't he?" Marcus nodded. "I'm sorry, baby. I know he was your mentor." Angela stood slowly, her expression cycling through shock, betrayal, and finally, a cold anger that Marcus recognized as his own. He wrote my recommendation letter for the FBI Academy. He said I had the perfect combination of idealism and intelligence to make a difference. Was he trying to recruit me for them? We think so, Torres said gently. But it doesn't matter now. He's in custody, and his recommendations won't mean anything where he's going. Angela was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Then she looked at Sophia. Where are you going now? Florida, Sophia replied. To live with my aunt. Agent Chen says she's already on her way to get me. Agent Chen? Angela turned to Marcus. Sarah Chen? Your friend from the academy? Dad, exactly how big was this thing? 6 states that we know of, Marcus admitted. Maybe more. The FBI is calling it Operation Lost Streets. It's going to be in the news cycle for months. Angela shook her head in amazement, then looked down at Sophia again. You were brave to remember everything, to help them catch the bad guys. I want to be a detective, Sophia said firmly. Like my dad wanted to be. Like you're going to be. Angela smiled, a real smile despite everything she had just learned. Tell you what, when you're old enough, if you still want to be in law enforcement, you call me. I'll make sure you get the best training, meet the right people. Deal? Sophia nodded eagerly, then surprised everyone by hugging Angela tightly. My dad would have really liked you, she whispered. As the FBI agents gently led Sophia away, Angela turned to her father. We need to talk, really talk, about all of this. I know, Marcus said. There's a lot to tell you about last night, about what's coming, about the dangers that... No, Angela interrupted. Not about the dangers. I know about those. I've been studying criminal justice for 4 years, Dad. I know what's out there. She paused, looking at Torres and Bradley, then back at her father. I want to know about the hope. About officers like these two who risked everything to do what's right. About 12-year-old girls brave enough to memorize details while being trafficked. About police chiefs who get lost on the way to graduations and end up saving 14 children. Marcus felt his throat tighten. His daughter had grown up while he wasn't looking, had become the kind of person who could stare into the darkness and choose to see the light anyway. Okay, he said. Let's go to lunch. You can bring your friends, and I'll tell you about hope. As they walked toward the campus restaurant, Angela linked her arm through his. Dad, one more thing. Were you really lost, or were you investigating? Marcus considered the question. Honestly, I was lost. Completely, thoroughly lost. The GPS failed. I couldn't read the map on my phone, and I pulled over in the worst possible neighborhood at the worst possible time. Or the best possible time, Angela corrected. If you hadn't gotten lost, those kids might not have been saved. Sarah's team was already investigating. They would have... Maybe, Angela interrupted. But would it have happened the same way? Would Captain Reynolds have confessed? Would those officers have found their courage? Would Sophia Daniels have trusted federal agents enough to share her information immediately? She squeezed his arm. Face it, Dad. Sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, even if we don't realize it at the time. They were joined at lunch by Torres Bradley and, surprisingly, Sarah Chen, who had driven back after getting an update from her team. The campus restaurant was bright and cheerful, filled with other graduating families, but their table carried a different energy, the bond of people who had shared something profound. So what happens now? Angela asked, after hearing the full story. With the investigation, with the trafficking ring? Now we clean house, Sarah said simply. Every name Reynolds and the others gave us, every lead Sophia remembered, every connection we can trace. It's going to take months, maybe years, but we're going to dismantle this network completely. And in Chicago? Angela pressed. Lieutenant Morrison and the others? Marcus set down his coffee cup. I'm going to handle that personally, quietly at first, building cases that will stick. Morrison thinks he's safe, that I don't know about his involvement. That gives us an advantage. Us. Angela raised an eyebrow. The department. The clean cops who still believe in what we're supposed to stand for. Actually, Angela said slowly, I meant us as in you and me. I start at the FBI Academy in 2 months, but until then I'm all yours. Whatever you need, research, surveillance, someone to watch your back. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. You're a civilian. This is dangerous. So was last night, and you weren't even on duty, Angela countered. Dad, I've made my choice. I'm going into law enforcement. I'm going to face dangers whether you like it or not. At least this way I can learn from the best, from you, from Agent Chen, from officers like Torres and Bradley who know how to walk the line between courage and survival. Sarah chuckled. She's got a point, Marcus. Besides, we could use someone with fresh eyes, someone they don't know is connected to the investigation. Marcus looked around the table, his daughter, fierce and determined, 2 officers who had found their courage when it mattered most, and an old friend who had helped him turn a traffic stop into the largest trafficking bust in FBI history. This wasn't how he had planned to spend his daughter's graduation day, but Angela was right. Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be. All right, he said finally. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks, no heroics. And Angela, the moment you start at the academy, you're out. Deal? Deal, Angela agreed, then raised her water glass. To Officer Tommy Daniels, who died protecting his daughter and started the investigation that saved dozens of children. To Sophia Daniels, Torres added, raising his own glass, who had the courage to remember and the strength to speak up. To getting lost, Bradley said with a small smile, and finding your purpose. To the good guys, Sarah added simply. Marcus raised his glass last. To family, he said, looking at each of them. The one you're born into, and the one you find along the way. As they clinked glasses, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo. Sophia Daniels with her aunt, both smiling, standing in front of a palm tree. The message read, Made it to Florida safe. Aunt Maria says thank you. Starting my detective notebook tomorrow. Marcus showed the photo to Angela, who smiled with tears in her eyes. She's going to be okay, isn't she? They all are, Marcus replied, thinking of the 14 children rescued from the truck, the 17 found in Chicago, and all the others they would save in the coming months. It's going to be a long fight, but yes, they're going to be okay. Later that evening, as Marcus finally checked into his hotel room, exhausted beyond measure, he found himself thinking about the speech he had planned to give at Angela's graduation lunch, something generic about following dreams and working hard. Instead, the day had given them all a different lesson, one written in rain and blood and courage. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes or arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they're lost fathers trying to get to graduations, frightened officers finally finding their courage, 12-year-old girls with perfect memories, and young graduates ready to take on the world's darkness. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not on grand stages but on rain-soaked streets in forgotten neighborhoods where nobody's watching. And sometimes, Marcus thought as he finally drifted off to sleep, still wearing his new suit, sometimes getting knocked to the ground is just the universe's way of making sure you're in the right position to see the badge in your pocket, the reminder of who you are, what you stand for, and why you can never ever stop fighting. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was another text from Angela. Thank you for making it, Dad. Thank you for everything. Mom would be proud of both of us. Yes, Marcus thought she would. She really would. 6 months later, at a federal courthouse in Chicago, Marcus Williams stood in full dress uniform as Sophia Daniels took the stand to testify against the remaining members of the trafficking ring. Angela sat in the gallery on break from the FBI Academy, taking notes for a paper she was writing about courage in the face of systemic corruption. Officer Torres, now Sergeant Torres, had transferred to Chicago to work with Marcus's new anti-corruption task force. Officer Bradley had returned to school to get his law degree, determined to prosecute the cases that officers like his partner brought to light. Captain Reynolds, in exchange for his cooperation, got 15 years instead of life. He would be eligible for parole in 7, assuming he survived that long. The other members of the network weren't so fortunate. Most would never see freedom again. As Sophia spoke clearly and confidently about her ordeal, never wavering despite the defense attorney's aggressive questioning, Marcus caught sight of someone in the back of the courtroom. It was one of the rescued children from that night in Riverside, there with her recovered family to support Sophia. Then another, and another. By the time Marcus counted, there were 11 of the 14 children present, all there to stand witness for the girl whose courage had helped save them all. This, Marcus thought, was why they did what they did. Not for the commendations or the headlines, but for moments like this, when the saved became the saviors, when victims became victors, when a 12-year-old girl could stand up to monsters and win. The defense attorney asked Sophia one final question. How can you be sure your memories are accurate after such a traumatic experience? Sophia looked him straight in the eye. Because my father taught me that details matter, that remembering could save lives. Every night in that truck in those warehouses, I repeated everything I saw like a prayer. License plates, faces, names, addresses. I knew that someday someone like Chief Williams would find me. And when they did, I needed to be ready. She turned to look at Marcus. I was ready. The prosecutor had no further questions. Neither did the defense. Some testimonies are so powerful, so complete, that they leave no room for doubt. As court adjourned for the day, Marcus stood to leave but felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Angela. Dad, she said quietly, I've made a decision. After I graduate from the academy, I want to specialize in crimes against children. I want to be the agent who finds the Sophia Danielses of the world. Marcus nodded, too moved to speak. The cycle continued, his wife's compassion living on in their daughter, Officer Daniels' sacrifice inspiring a new generation, Sophia's courage rippling outward in waves that would touch lives for years to come. Outside the courthouse, the November air was crisp and cold, so different from that rainy night in Riverside County. But as Marcus stood on the steps watching Sophia walk away with her aunt, watching his daughter head back to the academy, watching Torres coordinate with his team for the next phase of the investigation, he realized something. He had never made it to that hotel in Riverside County. He had never gotten those directions he pulled over to find. In the most literal sense, he was still lost that night when the officers threw him to the ground. But sometimes being lost is just another way of being found. Sometimes the wrong road leads to the right destination. And sometimes, a police chief's badge hidden in a pocket isn't just identification. It's a reminder that justice doesn't always come from where you expect it. Sometimes it comes from a lost father, a brave child, 2 frightened officers, and a daughter who refuses to let the darkness win. The war against corruption and trafficking would continue. There would be other nights, other raids, other rescues. But they had won this battle, saved these children, exposed these monsters. And that, Marcus thought as he walked toward his car, his chief's badge catching the light of the setting sun, that was enough for today. Tomorrow they would fight again. But today, they had won.